is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. That includes X, TikTok, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are on social media. And also go check out Game Changers. It's our new sponsor, a clothing sponsor. You can get some sick graphic tees. Smitty has a whole wardrobe of them if you haven't noticed by now. But you can use code AT412 for $10 off your purchase. And they have two different websites for you. One that's focused on football at pick6.la, and then including football and everything else at gamechanger.la. So gamechanger.la, pick6.la. Use code AT412 at checkout for $10 off of your purchase. And get some sick apparel. I know I have mentioned I want to get the Conor McGregor one for UFC 302 at the end of June, but I also want to get the BYU one. They have a Jimmer Fredette one as well. I always want to give a shout out to Jimmer Fredette when I can. So I'm gonna get myself some stuff. Go check out and get yourself some stuff as well. This is the Penguins episode. Not a ton of Penguins news because they're not in the playoffs and the draft lottery happened and they don't have a first round pick. So you're welcome, San Jose, for the 14th pick. Also, congrats on winning the lottery, and you had the highest odds anyway. So you have picks number 1 and 14 in this year's NHL lottery draft. We'll see if the Penguins do end up getting a first-round pick this year. The only way that happens, I believe, is if the Hurricanes is this year's if they win the Stanley Cup or make the Stanley Cup. I know
they got to get to the Cup.
They got to get to the Cup. And if they win the Cup, don't we get a first-round pick next year? Or something like that as well. I'm not entirely sure.
I just thought it was a 2 that turns to a 1 this year is the condition on the pick if they get to the Cup.
Okay. Because I thought there was
either way we have a second round pick.
But yeah, either way we have a second round pick. No first round pick. You're welcome, San Jose. Thanks for Erik Karlsson. But there has been some Penguins news. To the delight of many around the 412 area code, Todd Reirden was let go of his duties as assistant head coach of the Penguins, and I think that is a breath of fresh air for the organization from a fan base perspective, especially. And we'll see if there's more changes from there. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, but I think that this one was one of the most obvious things that I think the Penguins are going to do this offseason. The writing was kind of on the wall. You look at how bad their power play has been, and I know that there's a lot of responsibility on the power play, not just Todd Reirden. There's a lot of responsibility on the players and a lot of responsibility on Mike Sullivan for not making any changes to that power play as well. But Todd Reirden was the one ultimately who was over the special teams. So I understand from that perspective why they would want to move on, because realistically, the power play has not been good for the past several seasons. And this season, I believe they finished at 30th in the NHL in the power play. And that's a power play with the likes of Sidney Crosby, Erik Karlsson, Evgeny Malkin, so on and so on. You have several stars on that power play. It should not be as bad as it is. And so while a lot of that could come on the players, something had to give. And the easiest thing, like we talked about on the Pirates episode a little bit, when it comes to making changes for a team, easiest thing to do is take out the coach. So what are your thoughts on Todd Reirden being let go? How do you think it affects what they're going to do this summer?
I mean, this is something that we've been calling for. I would have thought earlier that it was going to happen, but then there was like this conversation coming about with like Sullivan wanting to retain him. And I just felt like Sullivan, not only because of his relationship with Kyle Dubas, but just seeming like how much of a, I don't know if leash is the right word, but the relationship that he's built so quickly with FSG, seemingly built with them, that he would have the pull to be able to retain whoever he wanted. So with them moving on from Reirden, it almost like creates to me a bigger conversation to be had. Like, let's start with the surface stuff with just Reirden, then we can kind of snowball that into the Mike Sullivan conversation. Todd Reirden, despite the fact that he was just recently given a new title and a promotion, and what was it, like a 5-year contract or something like that they're going to be paying out now, 3 years of him to not coach. Despite all that, like, I felt like this was necessary. Like, at the very least, you couldn't run it back with the exact same coaching staff. There had to be at least one change. And at least to Vellucci's credit, the penalty kill was top 10. so he could at least hang his hat on that, as opposed to look how star-studded the power play was. And again, the players have to shoulder a lot of that. And by all accounts, Sullivan is as much involved in the process with the power play as Todd Reirden. But it goes back to like there has to be a fall guy that's going to be lower on the totem pole. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. So absolutely no issue with them moving on from Reirden. Thought that was a move that needed to happen. And I'll be interested to see what they do with that in terms of, man, I know a lot of people have said, like, if the Maple Leafs are moving on from Sheldon Keefe, is it possible that he's going to end up being part of the Penguin staff? Whether that is an assistant at the NHL level or taking over. Like, Wilkes-Barre fired their coach. They made the playoffs and they fired their head coach, JD Forrest.
Yeah.
So, is that and then they have like a fallback option if they do fire Sullivan in season next year, if they aren't getting the results, they have an NHL head coach somewhere within the organization still as well. So I don't know. I'm not advocating for that. I'm not saying I want it to happen. It has crossed my mind. I know that other people have thrown that out. Now, in regards to Sullivan, for me, say that he didn't want this to happen and he really wanted to bring back Todd Reirden. He wasn't on board with this, and him and Sullivan were kind of like at an impasse with this, but it ultimately is Kyle Dubas is the GM and the president of hockey operations.
He can do what he wants. As long as FSG says okay, he can do what he wants.
Right. And I think that they're kind of putting that on his shoulders. Like, there's not a bunch of hockey gurus in FSG that are like, oh, no, we got to keep Todd Reirden. I think that's no. Like, they are giving Kyle Dubas full control to make those decisions. So, if there was some type of, back and forth there and ultimately Dubas won a power struggle, I think we're going to find out pretty soon if that was the case. I know that there's been a lot of conversation regarding Mike Sullivan and the New Jersey Devils and the Penguins, denying them access to interview him and stuff like that. And in the new CBA, you can't even trade coaches anyway. I know I saw people having that conversation, but that's not something that can take place. So I don't know how that process would work if the Penguins or Mike Sullivan wanted to go different directions. Would it just be them firing him? Would it be him resigning? How does that work in terms of his contract? I don't know. But I don't see it happening. If he really was that attached to Todd Reirden, one, good riddance. Like, if you want to go down with that anchor, we'll see you. I said that I was kind of indifferent on the idea of Mike Sullivan coming back anyway. If they start out of the gate slow next year, I will definitely be on the board on ship of him moving on from him. But if he wanted to run it back the exact same way with his coaching staff, he's got to go too. Which you could argue right now he is a massive part of the problem. But if he wanted to bring back this coaching staff as is, he is the problem.
Yeah, I think that Sullivan, for better or for worse, is probably loyal to a fault. And I think we've seen that in evidence throughout his Penguins career as the head coach. You had his guys early on that he was very loyal to, and a lot of those guys helped him win a Stanley Cup. And those were like the young guys that he brought up from Wilkes-Barre whenever he came up from Wilkes-Barre as the head coach. And I think that ever since those cup runs, you've seen Sullivan give loyalty to players, and if he's giving it to coaches as well, that can be to a fault. It's not always going to work out being loyal to somebody. And I know that Josh Yohe, who just wrote a piece on The Athletic about Sullivan being loyal to these players, and that there should be like an argument with him going out with Sid and Gino and everything. But I think that you can be loyal to a fault, and that fault could have happened if he did want to bring Todd Reirden back. And if that is the case, then yeah, Sullivan has some perspective that I just find wrong as far as what his coaching staff outlook should be. I think that if you look at what Todd Reirden was doing for this team, it's not something that is an element of success for this team. I don't know why you would want to bring them back. I understand that he probably is a friend and an associate, and you want to be respectful in that way. But at the same time, you got to do what's best for your team. You are the head coach. So if that's the case, then like I was closing out this season, I was more along the lines of I'm very open to Sullivan being gone, just because, back-to-back years of missing the playoffs. Like it doesn't happen often in hockey where if you miss like back-to-back years, like if the Penguins get to back-to-back years, and then they're in like November, December, and they are struggling. Like there's very realistic chance that Sullivan's going to be gone because you just don't see a lot of leash when it comes to NHL coaches. Historically, you get like a season or two, and if you just don't turn it around or you don't miss the playoffs, or you don't make the playoffs, then you're out the door. And I feel like that's why there's such a rotating door in this league with coaches, is just because they're constantly being let go by other clubs. But I do think that if you're going to go into this season, and then if that is true with him wanting the coaching staff back, and regardless whether that's true or not, I'm still on board with having the idea that he should have a short leaf, and having the idea that he's not the Mike Sullivan of 5 years ago. He's not going to he doesn't have that long leash. He doesn't have that tenure as that coach that allows him to basically be without mistake in any of his decisions. I think that whoever they hire, whether you're looking specifically at whoever they bring in as their assistant head coach, or whoever they're bringing in at their Wilkes-Barre head coach, they need to be a ready and able replacement for that head coaching position in Pittsburgh, because I feel like you cannot prepare. We just talked about relating to other sports, right? Yeah. On the Pirates podcast. I'm going to do it again. You cannot do what the Steelers did and go into a season without a succession plan if you are going to fire Matt Canada mid-season. You cannot, as the Penguins, go into this season without a ready and able succession plan for Mike Sullivan, whether that be an assistant coach to take over the head coaching spot, or whether that be your Wilkes-Barre Scranton coach to take over that head coaching spot. They have to bring in somebody that is going to be ready and able to do that, and Dubas is going to have to prepare for that. Dubas has to realize that that is going to be on the table. And I feel like Sullivan has to realize that that's going to be on the table too going into the season.
I would think so. I don't think that he's like so obtuse where he doesn't realize, like, you know, it's now or never. Like there's certainly their hands hovering right over that panic button. I think back-to-back years of missing the playoffs. FSG didn't buy this team for these results. So I think so. John actually asked a question along these same lines, so we can get to that now. If Solly somehow does leave, whatever way that looks like, who would be some good head coaching options? So when I saw this question earlier, I was trying to think. I was like, I want to have at least 3 names for this, and I came up with 4. And I feel like some of them aren't even necessarily realistic, because like how often do you see guys come from like these major college programs, but like with the success that like Denver has had, Boston College, like if you can poach one of their coaches, I think that would be a great route to go. And that's kind of a different path too. Like I don't want it to be a retread. Let me preface by saying that should be the first checkbox for me. Would not be like I don't know who's a good name to throw out there, like Gerard Gallant or something like that. Like a guy that's just somehow keeps it. Todd McClellan, somebody of that vein. So Marco Sturm came to mind. He's actually an assistant right now with the Los Angeles. By the way, I'm going to go with the NHL guys and then the college guys. Marco Sturm came to mind. He's an assistant coach right now with the Kings. Also coaches, I believe, the German hockey team. Might remember him from his playing days. Not necessarily a superstar player, but a decent hockey player. Carved out a nice career for himself. And then Jay Pandolfo is another one that I thought of. He is the coach at Boston University. Just coached first overall, soon to be first overall pick, Macklin Celebrini. David Carl, who is the head coach at Denver, would be another guy, just 34 years old. And then this one to me is he's been mentioned for the Sharks job because of connections there. So I was like, okay, maybe I could throw him in this mix as well. Jeff Halpern, who is an assistant coach with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's been there for a while. Was obviously part of the back-to-back cups in 20 and 21. He's probably coming up on his time to get a shot behind the bench. But he's a strong connection with Greer. They were together with the Capitals. So people were talking about him potentially being the guy for the Sharks, going that route. But I don't know, like that, it's so hard because I feel like new guys just rarely get opportunities, right? Like that's why I prefaced by saying about the retreads thing. It just seems like it's the same group of guys. Like what Travis Green just got hired. Was it the Devils that hired him? And I'm just like, why? Like, Why do these same coaches just continue to get jobs?
Well, and that's why I'll give you some names that I think that would be likely on the opposite end of what you were giving. These are the guys that would probably be likely names that are familiar names because they've been NHL coaches for a while. And
okay, so this isn't
and for better
you
or
went
for worse.
with not necessarily what you want, but
Yeah,
what
this
you
isn't
think
this isn't definitely not what I want, but names I think that would be in the circle.
I mean,
of
to be
guys
honest,
that could be
Sheldon
like,
Keefe's probably got to be in there. Like,
yeah, Sheldon Keefe.
realistically.
I think both Toronto coaches are going to be actually.
Okay.
Sheldon Keefe and then John Gruden, who is Jonathan Gruden, the not related to the John Gruden of the NFL, but Jonathan Gruden, the Penguins prospect, is the son of John Gruden of the Toronto Marlies, who's their head coach. So there's some familiarity with Dubas there.
Great. John Gruden's gonna be getting first line minutes now.
Yeah, yeah. So John Gruden could be potentially be, I don't know whether that's going to be the Wilkes-Barre job or an assistant job. That I think that could be a possibility, and I do think Sheldon Keefe is a realistic possibility, whether he becomes an assistant or Wilkes-Barre. But all these guys, except for like a few, are like these guys would be for both. I saw another name being thrown around, probably just because he's been an NHL coach for a while. Just recently fired, David Quinn from the San Jose Sharks.
Oh, bro.
I wouldn't want that, but I'm just saying. To be honest, probably.
To be honest, though, Sullivan stays. Very good chance that he's on the staff. He could be the Reirden replacement.
Yeah. Another one that's like an NHL like revolving door guy, Jay Woodcroft, is probably going to be in the same circle. Yeah. Which I mean, like I feel like I'd be more optimistic about Jay Woodcroft than I would about like a Dave Quitt or Gerard Gallant. And here's what I'll say about Gallant too. I think if the Penguins were in a situation where their one thing was head coach and they needed to get over the hump, I honestly don't think Gallant would be that bad of an idea, because I think Gallant is good at getting teams over the hump that are already established. But as far as getting a team from rebuilt or retool or however you want to phrase it, getting them to improve from that and play into a winning team, I don't think he's good for that. But I do think Gallant would be good for if you have a fully established team. The team itself is good. It's just the head coach is the problem. That's where I'd probably drop him into. But yeah, I mean, out of the guys that I'm thinking of, like Jay Woodcroft to me would be the most intriguing out of like the guys that have been at the NHL level. And then I feel like the guys who are in Toronto, whether that's Sheldon Keefe or John Gruden, I feel like in some capacity, there's got to be probably some connection there just because of Dubas. And I feel like that would probably make sense, whether it's one or both of them that ended up coming in, and whether that's an assistant or a head coaching job at the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Regardless, the reason I feel like whoever it's going to be for one of those jobs, one of those two, whether it's the new assistant or the new head coach for Scranton, one of those two has to be breathing down Sullivan's neck, and Sullivan would have to realize that his job is on the line. I feel like that has to be very cut and clear. There's no gray area whatsoever. He's got to realize this is my replacement if I'm gone.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the idea of if they were to part ways with Sullivan, hire Sheldon Keefe, and also bring in the AHL coach to coach the Wilkes-Barre team. I might just honestly be calling for Dubas to be fired right then and there.
No, honestly, I don't even know if I would want would you even want Sheldon Keefe? I don't think I'd want Sheldon Keefe. No. Especially about the quote, whenever we play teams, the teams play in a way to make us beat ourselves, or to make the Leafs beat themselves.
Right.
Like, what kind of quote is that? What do you mean?
I have no clue. Very odd to say, and that's almost to me like an admission that he knew that he was going to be gone. So I don't know. Very weird situation. The other question that we had here, Andrew, getting very deep here and also kind of dark, to be quite honest with you. If the Rangers win the Stanley Cup and Jacob Trouba gets his name on it, does it prove that there is no God? Jeez.
I'm assuming you saw that hit non-hit that happened the other night.
Yeah, I mean, Trouba was like that meme of on The Simpsons of the guy just jumping through the glass head first. The kid.
I don't know how anybody can watch that video. And when I say anybody, I should probably just say any Rangers fan can watch that video and say that that's fine. He was literally a rocket leaving the ice. And if you watch the side angle, his elbow is tucked out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this has been something that's happened for the past 5 years with him.
Yep.
And I feel like as of right now, the Rangers are probably the team I would least likely want to see the Stanley Cup, or at least want to see the Stanley Cup go to.
At the same time, they might be the favorites right now. They look unbelievable.
Yeah. So your Jack Sawinski preview, I said the Rangers were going to miss the playoffs. So
that's right.
Let's just throw back to that as well.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I'll face the music. I'm not gonna hide from it. I'm not gonna shy away from it. Terrible call on my part. That was absolutely piss poor.
Yeah. I mean, I said they'd make the playoffs, but I thought they'd be the 3. And I had the Penguins in the playoffs. So
I just didn't think Shesterkin was going to be good, and I didn't think the team was going to be as good.
I mean, they got outplayed last night, but Shesterkin was the difference. He was unbelievable.
Shesterkin's such a flopper, by the way. Remember a couple years ago, whenever we were playing him and he was flopping, the game the other night, whenever who hit his stick or whatever,
Svechnikov.
Yeah, what an absolute flop job. This isn't the NBA. You're not LeBron James. Stand up.
Yeah, Carolina was definitely better than them last night, and he was the difference. Shesterkin was the difference. Their entire, I don't want to say their entire game, but they beat you because they are so good on special teams. You cannot put them on the power play, and they're so good at killing the ones that they do give up. That's the difference to me. As long as they can stay afloat 5v5, I don't think anybody can beat them.
They're the anti-Penguins.
Yeah.
They are what we want to be.
I mean, I've been on the Dallas train. Colorado coming back in that game, unbelievable last night. But either way, like Colorado matching up with them would probably be more fun. That's probably what the league would want to have happen, is Colorado's star power going up against the Rangers. But I think either one of those two series, Edmonton with their star power going up against the Rangers, would be a ton of fun. But I don't want the Rangers.
Real. The NHL, they want Edmonton in the Stanley Cup final. And they'll want Edmonton in the Stanley Cup final until Connor McDavid finally makes a Stanley Cup final.
Mm-hmm. This is probably the year, like this path for them, like going through, my opinion. I mean, I don't want to slight the Kings, but honestly, probably the worst playoff team in the West, in my opinion, probably the second worst playoff team in total behind the Caps, who were clearly, in my opinion, the worst. The Kings, and then the Canucks, who with their goaltender issues, like, I don't know. I like the Canucks. They're a good team. They've been a team that I've kind of latched onto a bit this year. They're pretty fun to watch. I'll be surprised if they win 2 games. If that goes 6, I'll be impressed. So then they're going to go into the Western Conference Final against whether it's Dallas or Avalanche, which I feel like is going to be like, I'll be surprised if that one doesn't go 7 after also their first round series the way that they were. Like I just think that they're going to see one of those two teams having played a lot more hockey than Edmonton's going to have played up to that point. They got past LA in 5. If they can get past Vancouver in 5, I think they're going to be sitting pretty for whoever it is between Dallas and Colorado.
The Western Conference is the NFC of the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, this year specifically.
Yeah,
I would
that's
say.
what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was just like Colorado for a lot of the year was hurt. Vegas had a bunch of guys come back during the playoffs because they were on LTIR and did the cap manipulation thing, which I'm not going to get into because like Tampa has done it too. Like teams do it. So it's not just Vegas that has done it. But yeah, there were just so many injuries, and now Vancouver, like I said, with their top 2 goaltenders being hurt. I don't know. Is the Smith back yet? Is he starting now for Vancouver again? Or I know that they're not going to have, what's his name? Thatcher Demko, but the Smith was also hurt. So I don't know. I'm loving the NHL playoffs, but at the same time, I'm very concerned that the Rangers are going to win a Stanley Cup.
It'd be the first one since 1994.
Yeah.
So 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some individual players on the team that I like, but like as a whole, I've come to hate them maybe more than Philly right now, to be honest with you.
Well, that's what I was talking about with, Quentin, but for those who don't know, my friend Quentin, we were talking about it last night on Xbox, and he's just like, I think I hate the Rangers more than any other team.
Yeah. I don't know how we got to this point, but I agree.
It's tough
right.
because my immediate gut reaction when I would say who do I want to win the least in the East, my immediate gut reaction would have in the past would have been Boston, but now it's New York.
Yeah, I don't know how they did this. They've done a great heel turn on us. Want to mention a couple more of our folks here. Teach Barbershop, logo above Tyler right now. Teach Barbershop located at 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Again, Teach Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today. You can also do a walk-in with Tony or Ashley if you would like. Teach's been with us basically since day one, so go check him out. Like I said, download the app, The Cut, to book your appointment today. And then our friend Haley Wagner's small business as well, Everything Custom Designs. I got that logo now on the screen right above Tyler as well. The link to that will be in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this show. She makes around the 412 merch. She does shirts, hoodies, glass tumblers. There's a lot of different things, keychains now as well. Basically anything besides hats at this point. I think it's just like a troll job on her part to not do hats. But Everything Custom Designs.
Maybe if people get enough stuff from her, she'll be able to do hats one day.
There you go. Yeah, just keep buying stuff off her so she can have enough money to buy a machine to do the hats. And anytime that you buy something off of her, like, of course, be like appreciative and compliment and stuff, but also just drop in there, hey, it'd be really cool if you did hats. Just throw that her way as well. And then
I'm sure that won't get annoying at all.
And don't say who told you to say it either. So Everything Custom Designs, the link is in the description, wherever you're watching or listening. Tyler, anything else Penguins or hockey really related? Because we've been talking about the NHL playoffs the last 10 minutes.
Nothing really. Just who is your team? Who is your team for this NHL playoffs?
Like, who do I want?
Yeah.
I got to root for Carolina from the East until they're out because of compensation purposes for the Penguins. But I honestly, if that wasn't in play, I would be wanting the Panthers from the East and the Stars from the West. Panthers and Canes are pretty close, though. Like, I wouldn't mind either one of them representing the East. Dallas is definitely from the West.
Yeah, I feel like Dallas is a very likable team.
Dallas, Vancouver, Colorado, Edmonton from the West would be my order. Carolina, Florida, Boston, New York in the East.
Yeah, I think that probably would be similar to my order as well. I'm probably rooting for either a Dallas and Carolina / Florida Stanley Cup final or a Vancouver, Carolina, Florida final.
If Vancouver can get past Edmonton, I'll be shocked. But hey, you never know.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind Edmonton either. To be fair, like, I'm not a Connor McDavid hater, but
neither am I. I'll probably feel similarly. I'll feel similarly to him winning one as when Ovi did, and maybe even a little better because it's not a division rival.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, my number one matchup would be Dallas. And
now, if he starts getting 2 or 3, one is fine.
One is fine. Yeah.
I'm not trying to have some conversations about Connor McDavid versus Sidney Crosby, so he can get one and just chill.
Yeah. If he got 3, those conversations would get
very loud,
pretty heated, pretty quickly.
Yes, but we're not there yet. We're not even at 1 yet, so got a lot of work to do in front of you, Connor. But either way, thanks everybody for watching or listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything we talked about or questions for a future episode. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find Around the 412 over there. So until next time, for Tyler, for Smitty, that's been Around the 412. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.